Hello everyone, my name is Susan. Today I'm going to talk about a disaster which happened in 2008. There was a serious sugar dust explosion at the Imperial Sugar Plant in Georgia, United States. This incident caused serious fatalities and injuries and property damage, and the company was fined $8.8 million by OSHA. Was it intentional or an accident? What went wrong that caused the event? How did the company, municipal government, and communities do with the emergency response? As an OHS professional, if the same accident happens here, how can I prevent it and minimize the number of casualty and property damage? With these questions in mind, let's look at this incident. On February 7, 2008 at about 7:15 p.m., a series of sugar dust explosions at the Imperial Sugar Refinery in Paul Van Wert, Georgia, resulted in 14 worker fatalities. 8 workers died at the scene and 6 others eventually died at the hospital. 36 workers were treated for serious burns and injuries. Some caused permanent life-altering conditions. The first dust explosion was initiated in the enclosed steel belt conveyor and located below the sugar silos. The secondary dust explosion occurred throughout the packing buildings, parts of the refinery, and the bulk sugar loading buildings. The resulting fires destroyed the packing buildings, granulated sugar silos, and the palletizer and the bulk sugar loading area, and parts of the refinery also were severely damaged. In the first quarter of 2008, company posted a $15.5 million loss. The company suffered an economic depression after the incident. The incident affected the company's daily operation as well as financial situations, and the company was purchased by the Louis Dreyfus Group in 2012. OSHA fined Imperial $8.8 million in May 2010, and after the settlement negotiation, the company agreed to pay $6 million, while the company admitted no wrongdoing. What type of event was it? The explosive substance was identified as sugar dust. This is a man-made event and is an accidental emergency. Investigation conducted by the Department of Justice in 2013 ruled out it was a deliberate criminal activity. For further classification, it is sudden or instantaneous. We cannot predict, but we can prevent it. What went wrong that caused the event? Sugar was transported by a complex system of bucket elevators, screw conveyors, and conveyor belts. During the process, sugar spilled onto floors throughout the work area. In places, the spilled sugar was many inches deep. The machines were connected to a dust collection system, but it was undersized and in disrepair, and it was not connected to the bucket elevators and conveyors. Therefore, a significant amount of sugar dust escaped into the work area. There were dust collectors, but these were not regularly cleaned and maintained. The dust also was too small to handle. Over time, large amounts of dust accumulated on elevator duct, bins, and light fixtures made the surfaces hard to clean. Inadequate housekeeping led to the second explosion. Then what caused the primary explosion? In 2007, the company decided to enclose a conveyor belt in steel sheets to prevent the sugar dust spill onto floor. But this took away the ventilation that cleared dangerous accumulations of sugar dust from the tunnel. This faulty equipment maintenance leads to dust accumulated to an explosive concentration inside the enclosure, and an overheated bearing creates an ignition spark. Then the primary explosion happened. A primary explosion blew apart the enclosure, went into the packing building. Accumulated sugar was lofted and ignited by the advancing fireballs. The dust clouds fueled a chain reaction of secondary explosion, which spread through the buildings. Now let's move on what they did well in the emergency response. Garden City and Paul Wentworth Fire Department with personnel arrived at the scene in less than 10 minutes after the first explosion. The emergency responders immediately started search and rescue operations. Other agencies assisted the Paul Wentworth Fire Department for emergency processing. Ambulances responded to the scene from across 12 counties and firefighters from 3. The United States Coast Guard closed off the river in the area, and a firefighting tugboat was used to douse the resulting fire from the river. A helicopter was used to search the river for anyone who may have been thrown into it by the blast. Some injured workers were airlifted to specialized hospitals in time. A church close to the refinery was used as a point for families seeking information on relatives employed at the facility. The major fires in the buildings were extinguished the next day, and there were 40 people were saved. This slide is about gaps in emergency management contribute to the severity of the event. First, inadequate training. 2 workers re-enter the building structure to rescue their co-worker who died at the scene. If they are well trained, they will know sugar dust explosion can easily set off a series of explosions. Likewise, the policy also illustrated that workers are not allowed to re-enter the dust explosive scene without permission. Interviews of the company employees conducted by OSHA uncovered a lack of training, as 40 of the workers reported never receiving training on how to exit the building in an emergency. Only 5 employees recall having a fire drill. Second, bad maintenance. To prevent sugar spills, they installed an enclosed conveyor belt and took away the exhaust system. This caused dust accumulation to rise to the minimum ignition limit, led to the first dust explosion. Third, inadequate housekeeping. Perform routine maintenance on sugar conveying and packaging equipment should be equipped to minimize dust release and sugar spillage, which can prevent secondary explosions. Next is the weakened OHS management system. The lack of awareness of the explosive nature of sugar dust cannot efficiently manage the hazard. Small fires sometimes occur in the buildings, and the report from the insurance company addressed the high-risk hazards they didn't fix until the explosion hazards happen. They don't pay enough attention to the explosion hazard. Safety were delayed and neglected. In addition, they don't have emergency response plan for explosion hazard. It had never practiced evacuation procedures, and the lack of emergency lighting meant that people were confined to dark hallways and tunnels at the time of the explosions. Also, no audible or visual alarm devices in the work areas. There is no signal for workers to get prompt notification in the event of an emergency. The building is old and the alarm system, sprinkler system, and lighting system haven't been updated. As you can see, there are many problems in their management system. What did they do to fix it? Did their corrective action fill the gaps? Let's look at the OSHA corrective action first. Within months of the incident, OSHA, fearing that relevant employers may be unaware their facility presented a risk of dust explosions. So they sent a letter to 30,000 employees to alert them of the danger of a similar explosion occurring. OSHA also proposed the Combustible Dust Explosion and Fire Prevention Act of 2008, a new bill aimed at introducing regulations to reduce the risk of dust explosion. And the right-hand side is the company corrective actions. Apply all electrical in-hazard location standards to the design and operation of the new facility. Next is conduct a comprehensive review of all existing company facilities and implement identified corrective actions. Next, implement a corporate-wide comprehensive housekeeping program. And the last is develop training materials that address combustible dust hazard and training all employees and contractors. The corrective action given by OSHA and the company is very specific and targeted. For example, the housekeeping program can control combustible dust accumulations and the training and evacuation drills, and they can fix the gaps in this incident. Based on legislation and standards, if the same incident happens here, I will establish an emergency response plan for explosion hazard so the workers will not re-enter the explosive scene. I will establish incident management system to direct control and coordinate response and recovery activities, such as undertake post-incident analysis and incorporate lessons learned and best practices into emergency response plans. I will establish OHS management system, evaluate and audit the OHS system on a regular basis. I will report any incident to PSI and OHS contact center except first aid. And I will develop and implement comprehensive combustible dust control, housekeeping and training programs, and the training must including ventilation installing and training, and then I will conduct the evacuation, become familiar with the escape route. I will also conduct a risk assessment including risk identification, risk analysis, and risk evaluation. I will design an emergency alert system app within company. I will rebuilding, destroy property including changing emergency lines in eviction dust collecting system and fire suppression sprinkler system, fire alarm system, and design electrical system. I will support injured workers recover in psychological and social well-being. From this incident, we realized that establishing an incident management system and OHS management system is important, and having an emergency response plan conducting fire drills and evacuation, regularly maintenance and housekeeping and training are also crucial for explosion prevention. This is the references I used for this presentation. If you have any questions, feel free to send me an email. Thank you.